I would say that what I saw was a fairly smooth running process. Indeed, I would say it was quite impressive in terms of how voters were allowed to, identification was checked, ballots were issued and were put in the boxes. Turnout did seem disappointing, and I would have expected higher turnout based on what we would have at an election. I did report back to my own election agent in Scotland and said one of the reasons possibly for the turnout being low is the winter weather of 17 degrees, and he replied to me saying if it was 17 degrees Scotland would have a low turnout as well because they'd all be out enjoying the good weather. But that's the cultural difference. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone would like to ask me anything in particular. I think turnout, I don't know what the final turnout is, but certainly in the stations we were in, it was quite low at the different points in the day. Now, I can't directly compare what a turnout in Bangladesh would be because your type of election is different and your hours of voting are different. My experience in a UK election, which is the one I can give direct comparison to, is we would expect, we have a different set of hours. We have 7 in the morning till 10 at night. We would get a small to medium queue early morning, and then it would die off back of 8, half 8, 9 o'clock, and it would be quite quiet until about 4 in the afternoon onwards until through the evening towards the end of the night. So our system is over a longer period, so it's difficult to directly compare. But the turnout was definitely low in the areas. We were in a more hotly contested area, and the turnout was obviously better in that area. So there's different dynamics at play, I think, in the different constituencies we visited. That's a very good question, and I'm going to have to think long and hard before I give a full answer to that one. I have to be honest. I have 30 days, I believe, to make my recommendations, so I will consider everything I've seen today in fully, and will submit my comments, warts and all, as we say. As I say, most of what I saw was very impressive in terms of the technical side, and I think that part of the election we can be confident on. How we persuade people to take a greater engagement is a different issue, and is also a political issue as well as a technical issue.
Report of the OIC mission on observation of general election in the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Referring to the invitation to His Excellency, the Secretary General, to participate in observing the general election in the People's Republic of Bangladesh, on behalf of OIC General Secretariat and His Excellency Secretary General Mr. Hussein Ibrahim Taha, express our appreciation of this invitation. Our mission, OIC mission, was led by Ambassador Yusuf Ad-Dubai, Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs, and Mr. Shakir Mahmoud Bandar, Head of Election Observation Unit, and Mr. Adam Mahmoud, Member of the Delegation. The OIC mission began its work observing the general election in Bangladesh with the reference to the OIC Charter and the OIC Code of Conduct of the OIC Observers and guidelines for international election observers and foreign media for Bangladesh Election Commission. Pre-election activities, the OIC Election Observation Mission joined with the other international and domestic election observation missions. The OIC mission held a meeting with those responsible for organizing the elections. The OIC mission was provided with the information about the electoral process. Number 1, election day. On the election day, on 7 January 2024, the OIC Election Observation Mission visited many polling stations in capital, Dhaka. Voting time was from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. During the visit, the OIC delegation witnessed the opening of polling stations. The citizens exercised of their voting rights. Opening of polling stations. OIC observers noted that the polling station visited opening their doors on the time decided by the election authorities. Polling station personnel. The OIC delegation noted that the election personnel and the polling stations have the required competence to carry out their work. Election material, equipment, and material were provided in all polling stations visited. The presence of women and young. The OIC delegation noted a presence of women and young voters in the election process. Besides the women's voters, a large number of women were seen working as election officials in different polling stations. The presence of representatives of political parties. The delegation noted that the representative of candidates and the media were present in almost all polling stations. Attempt to influence the voters. The OIC delegation noted no attempt to influence the voters. Security. The OIC mission noticed a good presence of security men to secure the polling stations. Closing of polling stations. Closing of polling stations took place peacefully without intervention from any party. After the closing, the counting process took place smoothly. Mission final report. Because this is brief of report. Mission final report. The OIC mission will submit its final report on this mission to His Excellency, the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, including its detailed observations and recommendations. In conclusion, beside on the above observations, the OIC observation mission is of the opinion that the elections were organized in peaceful manner, and the OIC expressed its appreciation to the government and people of the People's Republic of Bangladesh for the assistance provided to the OIC election observation mission. And we submit congratulations to government and people of Republic of Bangladesh for organizing successful election, prepared by OIC election observation mission to observe the general election 7 January 2024 in the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
The government and people of Bangladesh for very peaceful elections. We are equally impressed with the voters' discipline, patience, and peaceful conduct of these elections. Most notably, the women and the youth for their show of patriotism, commitment to democracy by turning out in large numbers to vote. We also commend the National Election Commission for its professional conduct on the voting process and laud and appreciate the Joint Security Task Force for ably providing an election security. We also commend all the volunteers on how they were able to help the voters. It was indeed a good sign to see all the different party volunteers sitting together and working side by side. This is historic. Most often time, party agents don't sit together. Most often time, party agents are in confrontation. But what we saw today was very, very impressive. All of them sat in one tent and they were all doing their jobs together. So we should clap for ourselves, clap for yourselves. Well done.
Несколько слов хотел бы сказать о тех впечатлениях, которые у меня остались от посещения избирательных участков. Все было организовано на достаточно высоком уровне. Меня приятно поразила открытость этих выборов, когда каждый избиратель мог получить информацию о кандидатах, о том, как организованы выборы. То есть на любой вопрос организаторы на участковых комиссиях давали развернутые ответы. Были наблюдатели на каждом избирательном участке, которые представляли самые различные политические партии. Было очень много журналистов, и это тоже одно из обстоятельств, которое позволяет судить о том, что эти выборы были открытыми и демократичными. И мы можем говорить о том, что сложились определенные традиции выборов в этой республике, в Бангладеш, Народной Республике Бангладеш. И эти традиции свидетельствуют о том, что политические процессы в республике развиваются стабильно, поступательно, на прочной демократической основе. И это чрезвычайно важно, особенно я еще хотел бы одно обстоятельство отметить в ходе этих выборов. Обеспечение безопасности. Обеспечение безопасности избирателей, избирательных участков. Это тоже в наше нестабильное время чрезвычайно важно. Ну, а сейчас я готов, наверное, ответить на вопросы. Я думаю, что это будет наиболее оптимально. К миру, где будет множество центров политического влияния. Понятно, что это не всех устраивает. Понятно, что представители старого миропорядка, они так просто не уступят и будут вести очень серьезную, мощную борьбу. Что, собственно, и происходит. И в ход пускаются самые различные средства, мы это все видим. И современная политическая жизнь, в том числе и международная, дает тому каждый день множество примеров. Поэтому самостоятельные страны, которые проводят самостоятельную, основанную на собственных национальных интересах политику, они не устраивают адептов старого миропорядка. И в ход пускаются самые различные средства. И мы также, вы как журналисты, наверняка больше меня знаете, что это за средства. Поэтому я вот это как раз и имел в виду. Мне импонирует, что Народная Республика Бангладеш проводит политику, которая основана на собственных национальных интересах. Но это не всем нравится. Именно это я имел в виду, когда мы общались с одним из кандидатов. Я не раз выезжал с миссией международного наблюдателя на выборах, хотя мой стаж пребывания в Центральной избирательной комиссии Российской Федерации это всего 2,5 года. Но мне удавалось выезжать, и вот здесь я увидел очень серьезную активность избирателей.
Here in Bangladesh, I saw that voters are active.
И вот та встреча с одним из кандидатов в парламент показывает, каким образом, насколько активно избиратели, каждый, понятно, за своего кандидата, за свою партию, они вовлечены в политический процесс. Это невозможно сымитировать. Это действительно вовлеченность реальных граждан в политику, то есть в определение будущего данного государства. Вот это вот мне показалось чрезвычайно важно. И это дает основание говорить о том, что эти выборы носят легитимный характер.
Is it that important to come to Bangladesh? Were you forced to come to Bangladesh? Were you forced by the government of Bangladesh to come? No, sir. We have stronger ties with Bangladesh, Palestine and Bangladesh. And we received invitation. As I told you, 3 months ago I was in Zimbabwe. We were receiving invitations. So whenever we have invitation, we respond to invitation. I came from the West Bank, which is not a war zone like Gaza. So I was able to cross to Jordan and flying to Bangladesh through Kuwait. So I enjoyed the liberty of movement, unlike Gazans people. So whenever we are invited to a country that, we have good relationship with them, we go. I'm here in another hat. I represent also, I'm by coincidence, the head of the executive office of the Arab electoral management bodies. And that body represents 12 member states. So in my report, I will be reporting to my country, I will be reporting to that organization. So yes, it's important to respond to invitation. The most important thing is to share experience, your experience, and the experience we saw today with our colleagues in Bangladesh. So we learn from each other during these visits. It's not political visits, it's not a show visit, it's professional visits. Your second part of the question, I already in my opening statement, I replied to that. So we were happy now regarding whether the Prime Minister will give power to, that's for you, that's for the government to do, not for me. What we saw today in summary is a good process, good voting process in a voting day. I don't know what's the participation rate till now. In the early morning when we were touring the centers, it was very low. And people were expecting that percentage to rise up. But listen, if you are registered in the voter list, and I know registry is not obligatory here in Bangladesh, and you decline of going voting, the percentage goes from the register, and nobody is forcing anybody to vote. You take certain countries where voting, you have to vote by law. So I cannot comment whether it's 10%, 15%. That's a message from the audience to the certain election. And that message should be analyzed by politicians, by academia in Bangladesh rather than an international observer like me. But we saw so many elections. In Jordan, for example. In Jordan, this is my colleague, 35%. Election 35%. So it was good election as well, and things are stable until they are planning for next election next year, I think, or so. So one cycle, rounded with 30%, 35%. So it has to be analyzed, studied by politicians and the research center like yourself and maybe universities.